I hope you had yourselves a wonderful weekend, and of course we get to give you updates here over what happened where you were not on the weekend. But of course the markets are closed usually on the weekends, but of course stories keep coming in over the different companies and what's happening in the global financial markets. And of course I am Anthony SSEBALE to bring you all those latest updates over the weekend now to your screen. And of course the show is proudly brought to you by OTEX East Africa, your #1 private stock exchange here in Uganda. Now OTEX, under the new ZABU initiative, you can be able to buy and sell treasury bonds across East Africa. You can be able to learn more about these treasury bonds by simply dialing *292# on your mobile phone, and you'll be able to access straight up all the different financial instruments across East Africa. Remember also, these bonds come with the various interest rates, depending on of course, the maturity period. They have 4-year maturity bonds, they do have 5-year, they have 10-year, and so many others. And of course, they do give you that that leverage of getting to choose which is your favorite, maturity period and with what interest it comes with. The minimum amount you can start with at OTEX East Africa is 15,000 Ugandan shillings, and of course there is no maximum. You can trade as much as you can on the stock exchange. On that particular platform, you can transact this money off your mobile money wallet onto the OTEX East Africa stock exchange, or you can actually be able to sell and then receive the money on your mobile money. The markets at OTEX open at 15 minutes past 8 a.m. and close at 15 minutes past 3 p.m. East African Standard Time. Now let's get to look at the stock market's performances as per Friday. And of course, generally looking across East Africa, we did have mixed performances, some good, some bad, some moderate. But looking at, for example, the Johannesburg Stock Exchange, we had a fairly good participation. And the index there, the J203, which is the benchmark, increased in performance. And when you look across to Nairobi, and then Zimbabwe, we had a different picture there as well. And then Nigeria Stock Exchange appreciated as well in its value that is on their benchmark, based on their benchmark index as well. And that's of course generally speaking across East Africa, across Africa rather. But of the East African market and the African market, the global financial markets still continue to face tough times, and especially there in the US stocks, with the major indexes declining on Friday and registering poor performances over the entire week when you look at their weekly performance figures. But let's get to start with, of course, the Uganda Stock Exchange and get to analyze some of their stock performances here for the different companies that did participate in the trading. Now, on average, we had 3 USE listed companies or equities participate in the trading, and starting of course with the gainers, we had 3 top gainers on the market and 4 losers on the market. Stanbic Bank Uganda led the top gainers with a 9.52% share price appreciation, closing at exactly 23.0 Ugandan shillings per share. And Stanbic Bank, of course, appreciated from 21 shillings to 23.0 Ugandan shillings per share, which was a 2 shillings gain. This might look a little bit small or marginal depending on, of course, the angle you're looking at it. But this usually happens for stocks with very small share prices. They do have slight movements having very great impacts when it comes in terms of percentages, and this is what we are seeing here. Just a 2 shillings gain, and we have a 9.52% appreciation, and of course making Stanbic Bank the top gainer for the day. Stanbic wasn't alone. East African Breweries Limited was also on the gaining list at exactly 1.10%. Share price appreciation closing at 5,075.07 Ugandan shillings per share. That was East African Breweries Limited there on the stock exchange in Uganda. Centum Investments also did appreciate about 0.4% and closed at 241.44 Ugandan shillings on the stock market. Centum has had several problems regarding its share price going below 300 shillings this year. And when you look at currently their share price, they are standing at exactly 241.44 Ugandan shillings per share there on the stock exchange. On the bottom losers side, unfortunately, we did have only, or even fortunately, we only had cross-listed companies. And these, of course, at the bottom, we had Kenya Airways come out with a day-end share price depreciation of 0.10%. A pretty much small loss here on the Uganda Stock Exchange. But the day ended with a share price of 115.01 Ugandan shillings on their stock price. Kenya Airways has had a fair share of problems this year, as of course looking at the last few weeks and days after going through a pilot strike, overpay, and the debt that they're still currently servicing and losses from the COVID-19 pandemic. So we still do looking at very keenly Kenya Airways and hoping they will have a much better performance come next year. Jubilee Holdings as well lost on the market, a 0.1% loss of about closing at a price of about 5,900 Ugandan shillings. Yes, the company still struggles to come above the 6,000 mark, though the efforts still are in vain. On Friday, the company ended with a loss of 0.1% and closed the day with 5,930 Ugandan shillings as their closing price. Equity Bank Limited lost 0.1% of their trading price on Friday as well, and closed the day with a 1,352.85 Ugandan shillings stock price there that closed the day, and of course registered a loss of 0.1%. Equity Bank is still, however, the most valuable stock on the Uganda Stock Exchange, currently counting a market capitalization of close to 5.02 trillion Ugandan shillings. Nation Media Group lost a 0.1% off and closed the day with a 477.48 Ugandan shillings closing price on the stock exchange here. Regarding, of course, the numbers, that is in terms of the shares that were traded on average, we did have an increase in the number of traded shares by volume, and this was a 283% improvement based on the previous day's shares that were recorded. And now, according to, of course, data from the Uganda Stock Exchange, Cipla Quality Chemical Industries led the top movers on the market with a total volume of 76,800 shares that were traded. Cipla did not have any shift in their price. The price was maintained at 60.0 for the day's trading, but moved the market with a total of 76,000 shares on the market. Cipla was followed by Bank of Baroda Uganda at exactly 48,700 shares on the stock exchange, and Stanbic Bank Uganda at 2,300 shares that were recorded on the stock exchange here for you. Now getting to look at the benchmark index, the all-share index, it moved up by 8.49 points, which was a 0.71% gain there, and closed at 1,209.88 points mark. representing a 1-week loss of 0.91% and a 4-week gain of 0.39% there on the stock market, but an overall year-to-date loss of 14.84% on the stock exchange. The local company index, which tracks the aggregate performance of the local stocks on the exchange, increased as well by 1.45% on the last day of trading, reaching 272 points, representing now a 1-week gain of 1.45% and a 4-week gain of 2.15%. Of course, this was mainly dedicated to the wonderful performance that was put up by Bank Uganda on Friday. Now let's get to look at the particular details here, and let's start with SSEBALE, Quality Chemical Industries, which was the biggest mover for the day. SSEBALE Quality Chemical Industries got to list on the 17th of September 2018, making it one of the youngest so far listings on the stock exchange. SSEBALE Quality Chemical Industries represents a total of 1.04% of the entire Uganda Securities Exchange equity market. And of course, this is because of their 219 billion Ugandan shillings market capitalization currently. Now, currently, this puts them in the 11th position in value via market capitalization on the stock exchange. And currently also, it trades under the ticker symbol SSEBALE QCIL on the stock exchange. Particularly on Friday, they did have a 60.0 Ugandan shillings closing price, which did not change for the day. But the total volume traded was 76,800 shares, which was the biggest volume for the day. And this was also ending the day with a total registered 4.61 million Ugandan shillings turnover on the markets. Shares outstanding currently stand at 3.65 billion shares, and the total market capitalization is 219 billion Ugandan shillings. Basically, SSEBALE hasn't had a good time this year as well when it comes to the value of the stocks they are currently floating on the exchange. Looking at their last day, they didn't have any change at 60.0, but the beginning of the year, SSEBALE was trading at 92.0 Ugandan shillings per share. Comparing that to their current price of 60.0, they have lost 34.8% of their trading price in year to date. This is the 11th in best on their year to date performance, and this is of course out of the 18 listed companies. However, also shareholders should take note that in the recent concluded month, just exactly 1 month ago, SSEBALE lost 8% of value on their stock price at the Uganda Stock Exchange. SSEBALE Quality Chemical Industries is, however, the 6th most traded on stock, despite being the top mover for Friday. That is in the last 3 months data from the 12th of September to the 9th of December 2022. The company has only traded 509,900 shares on the stock exchange, and these are valued at exactly 32.8 million Ugandan shillings over the period. A volume high of just about 93,700 shares was achieved on the 11th of November. That was exactly about a month ago or so. And on average, per trading session, they do have about 8,094 traded shares per session there on the stock exchange. They did have trading on the 24th as well at 10,000 shares, and then the third last day of their trading was on the 11th, where they had their biggest volume for the last 3 months. A fairly very average performance from SSEBALE Quality Chemical Industries. Remember, SSEBALE got to have their first day break in terms of profit this year since listing in 2018. They had never made a profit. out of their sales. But this year, they definitely hit the sales and got to make a profit this year, and even issued a dividend of about 1.5 Ugandan shillings per share for every shareholder at the company, which was a quite wonderful move on their side there at the Uganda Stock Exchange. SSEBALE Quality Chemical, like I said, is a pharmaceutical company here in Uganda, basically manufacturing antiretroviral drugs for HIV and also anti-malarials as well. But next year they have a project, of course, of expanding to, of course, include an anti-cancer drug unit that will help them in manufacturing anti-cancer drugs. And we hope definitely that will also come off with an increase in revenue and much more profitability for the company. Now, importantly, very importantly, let's get to look at Stanbic Bank Uganda, who not only moved the market, but also did have a good appreciation, which was the best for the day. And list, of course, was on top of the gainers list. This is, of course, part of Africa's leading financial institutions in Uganda, and it's under the Standard Bank Group, South Africa, which is a financial service institution, of course, that has a very great wealth of experience in the sector. Currently, Stanbic Bank Uganda, Stanbic Bank Uganda has about 1.18 trillion Ugandan shillings worth of market capitalization, representing about 5.61% of the entire Uganda Stock Exchange. This currently is putting the company in the 5th position in terms of value via market capitalization on the stock exchange. Yesterday, rather Friday, that is the last day of trading on the stock exchange, the company went up in terms of value by 2.0 Ugandan shillings on their stock price and closed at 23.00 Ugandan shillings per share. This was a 9.52% share price appreciation for the day. However, looking at the number of shares, they did have about just 2,300 shares that were traded, and they ended the day with a 52,900 Ugandan shillings turnover on the market. And shares outstanding are 51.2 billion shares on the market, and the market capitalization of 1.18 trillion Ugandan shillings was registered on the stock exchange here at Stanbic Bank Uganda. This gain really helped them register a 1-week gain of 9.52% and a 4-week gain of close to 15%, which is one of the best on the stock exchange here in Uganda. Currently also, their year-to-date performance has improved after, of course, this gain to 23. They began the year with 26.0 Ugandan shillings, and probably they want to go back to that one or even go much better before they wind up the year. But looking at this, 11.5% has been so far shed off from their 26.0 Ugandan shillings price that began the year 2022, ranking the company the 8th in terms of year-to-date performance. Also, the shareholders' fears may be allayed by their 15% gain so far now on their 1-month performance on the Uganda Stock Exchange. Currently, it is still maintaining its position. The bank is still the #1 most traded on the Uganda Stock Exchange in the past 3 months, from the 12th of September to the 9th of December 2022. The company has traded now 1.31 billion Ugandan shillings worth of shares on the stock exchange, and a total volume of 62.4 million traded shares on the market. There, over the period, they have about 990,478 traded shares on average per trading session, and a volume high of over 53 million shares, which was achieved on the 20th of October within the same period. And that's it from Stanbic Bank Uganda there. Regarding the summary here, the data shows 283% improvement in the volumes of the Uganda Stock Exchange and 63% improvement in the turnover on the exchange. And the current market capitalization is currently 21.0 trillion Ugandan shillings on the stock exchange here at the Uganda Stock Exchange. And that's it from the Uganda Stock Exchange. Remember also the benchmark index, that is our, the all share index, improved, of course, because of the generally better performance for the day at an 8.49 points increase, closing at 1,209.88 Ugandan shillings. And the local company index did actually also increase by 1.45% on the Uganda Stock Exchange. That's it from the Uganda Stock Exchange. We are going to take a commercial break, and we return with stocks, of course, from Nairobi, as well as Zimbabwe Stock Exchange and other stock exchanges around Africa, and we will wind up with the US markets. Stay with us. My name is Anthony SSEBALE.
Smart 24, driving business.
The taste of Uganda in a new international park.
He must be rich, tall, handsome, from a respectable family. He must have a maid because at our home we do not work.
Conductor Masao.
Why? Obadde olobye ku ssimu?
Yamunange, anti your TV enkolera.
Enjoy a new world of entertainment with over 80 TV and radio channels, plus movies from wherever you are. Download the Yo TV Channels app from your app store and enjoy 30 days of free streaming with MTN.
Yo TV Channels.
Smart 24, driving business.
Welcome back to the program, and thank you so much for watching Smart 2014. We do drive your business. My name is Anthony, and I am your host. Now, getting off to Nairobi Securities Exchange, the exchange had a better performance for the last day of trading. In aggregate, the number of stocks, rather the number of companies that participated in the trades for the Friday trading were 45. The day ended, however, with 22 gainers and just 18 losers, beating the gainers by 4. And beating the losers rather by 4 there in number. Uchumi Supermarket redeemed their stock after ending the day with an 8.33% gain. which was the biggest gain for the day. And they did have a closing price of 0.26 Kenyan shillings per share on their stock. They were followed by Sanlam Kenya, who gained 8.01% on their stock price as well. Total Kenya as well did move about 4.58% higher in stock value, and Nairobi Business Ventures moved 4.53% higher on the fifth day of trading at the exchange. On the losing side, Liberty Kenya Holdings did lose worse on the day, and it lost about 8.21% and closed at 4.47 Kenyan shillings per share. Everready East Africa lost 8% as well, and Olympia Capital Holdings lost about 6.03%, as well as TransCentury at a 5.95% share price depreciation. These were the worst performances for the day at the Nairobi Stock Exchange. In terms of movement, Safaricom did move the market best at exactly 1.26 million shares that were traded, and he was followed by Kenya Power and Lighting Company at a 671,000 shares volume, as well as KenGen at 273,300 shares, and KCB Group at 265,400 shares. Of course, this was a decline based on data for the previous day in terms of volume, and to be specific, 52% decline in volume was registered. When you look at the number of the turnover, it went up by 82%, and the number of deals improved as well by 3% on the Nairobi Stock Exchange. Uchumi Supermarket, who was the top gainer just a few days ago, was actually one of the companies that was losing, and of course this is due to the volatility in the markets, especially for these some of these small stocks. Currently, Uchumi Supermarket represents 0.0048% share of the entire equities market in Nairobi Stock Exchange, and their shares currently hold about a value of 94.9 million Kenyan shillings on the stock exchange, which is, when you look at the ranking here, the 62nd most valuable on the stock exchange, really coming at the very end of the table there in terms of value. But as per the trading yesterday, on Friday, they went up by 0.02 points, closed at 0.2426 Kenyan shillings from 0.24, and registered an 8% gain, which was the biggest for the day. The number of volumes, the number of shares they did trade were 800, and they did record 5 deals and 207 Kenyan shillings turnover on the market. There are currently shares outstanding of 365 million traded shares and 94.9 million Kenyan shillings market capitalization. Uchumi Supermarket, regarding the last 3 months and or so of their performance, they have lost 3.7% generally, as well as in their 1 week performance, they have lost 3.7%. They did also begin the year with a 0.24 Kenyan shillings share price, and currently at 0.26, they have gained 8.3% on their stock value, putting them in the 15th position in this line of year-to-date performance on the stock exchange. They do have a lot of traffic, and they are the 21st most traded on company on the Nairobi Stock Exchange in the past 3 months. And in the past 3 months, we are meaning from 9th of September to the 9th of December. Within this period, the company has traded a total volume of close to 2.01 million shares, valued in about 520,000 Kenyan shillings. And that is Uchumi Supermarket for you. Total Kenya as well, 4.58% share price appreciation was registered after they added 1.1 Kenyan shillings on their stock price, ending the day with a price of 25.1 Kenyan shillings on the stock exchange. The company's current market capitalization is at 4.39 billion Kenyan shillings, and that makes the company the 27th most valuable on the stock exchange, and representing about 0.223% of the entire equities market on the Nairobi Stock Exchange. The number of deals were 3 and 1,000 traded shares, ending the day with the 25,000 Kenyan shillings market value there on the stock exchange. The company currently stands at about 175 million shares outstanding. Total Kenya has had a good time this year. When you look at their last 1 week performance, they're on the gaining side. On their 4-week performance, they're still in the green figures. And then on their 3 months base performance, they're still at a 0.4% gain, which is quite a good improvement for the company. Total Kenya is the 36th most traded on stock on the Nairobi Stock Exchange as well, which makes it a very good choice for trading at the Nairobi Stock Exchange. From the 9th of September to the 9th of December, they have had about a volume of 321,400 shares that were traded in close to 252 deals on the market, valued at 7.47 million shillings on the market. Their volume high was 87,500 shares on the Nairobi Stock Exchange. And that's it from the big boys there at the Nairobi Stock Exchange. But regarding the performance of the index, and of course, this is for those of you who have exchange-traded funds, this could be very important for you to know how your money is moving. Now, the benchmark index inched up 0.13 points. That was a 0.1% points gain to close at 126 points, representing a 1-week gain of 0.03% and a 4-week loss of 1.27%. Yet an overall year-to-date loss of 24.03 is still lingering around the all-share index. The NSE20 appreciated at a 0.22%, whereas the NSE25 did depreciate at a 0.24% price depreciation on the stock exchange. Of course, these indexes give you the overall performance or the picture of the overall performance, and the NSE20 is for the top 20 companies and the NSE25 for the top 25 companies. And for the exchange traded fund, where you're basically investing in a group of stocks at the same time, this can be very important performance indicators for you there. In summary, we did have 3.8 million shares at a total value of 336 million Kenyan shillings, well above that, 336 million Kenyan shillings. Like I said, compared to the previous day, Thursday, they did have an improvement in the volume and a decline in the volume, rather, at a 52% decline, and an improvement in the turnover at 82%, and 3% improvement in the number of deals that were recorded on the exchange. Currently, the current market capitalization of the NSE is 1.97 trillion Kenyan shillings, rather, on the stock exchange. And that's the trading from the Nairobi Stock Exchange there. Moving ahead to Zimbabwe, let's see, Zimbabwe Stock Exchange had an awful day of trading after losing about 0.33 points on the Zimbabwe Stock Exchange. Now, let me tell you a little bit about the Zimbabwe Stock Exchange. Now, this is a sole official stock exchange for the Zimbabwe nation, bringing together companies looking for long-term capital and investment, of course, and investors looking for profitable investment opportunities. The Zimbabwe Stock Exchange, or the ZSE, does have several indexes, and one of them is the mining index. basically comprising of all the companies that are involved in mining. And then they do have the all-share, the industrial index, which is comprising of other companies except those under the mining index. And then we have the all-share index comprising of all the market companies there. This was, of course, initiated in 2018. That is the all-share index. Now, in since August 2009, the sale of listed equities on the Zimbabwe Stock Exchange has been subject to a 1% withholding tax on the gross. However, exempt from the general public capital gains tax, which is a 20%. Additionally, both the resident and non-resident shareholders are liable to a 10% special tax on their dividends and from the companies listed on the Zimbabwe Stock Exchange, which is 500 basis points below the general rate of 15% on unlisted companies. Barclays Bank and Stanbic Bank of Zimbabwe offer custodial services for both the local and foreign investors on the stock exchange. Now, interestingly, as of June 2017, when you look at the statistics back then, we did have 63 listed equities on the Zimbabwe Stock Exchange. And since February 2009, they have been quoting their prices in the US dollars as legal tender consequent to the country's hyperinflation that rendered the Zimbabwean dollar impractical for trading on the bourse. Now, when you look at the trading for the last day on Friday, Zimbabwe Stock Exchange on average had 22 listed equities that participated in trading and ended the day with 7 gainers and 7 losers. Edgar's Stores led the gainers at an 11.8% share price appreciation and closed at 9.0 Zimbabwean dollars per share, followed by Seedco at 3.87% and OK Zimbabwe at 0.52%. When you look at the losing side, Amalgamated Regional Trading came out last with an end-of-day price depreciation of 7.79% and closing at 14.2 Zimbabwean dollars per share, followed by General Beltings Holdings and FBC Holdings, as well as African Distillers. Amalgamated Regional Trading recorded the highest volume of 10 million traded shares, followed by Econet Wireless Zimbabwe at a 1.31 million traded shares, and Delta Corporations at 220,100 shares, whereas Insco Africa had about 124,900. The benchmark index went down by 0.33 points, and this is now representing a current 1 week of loss of 0.74%, and definitely a 4-week gain currently still being registered on Zimbabwe Stock Exchange. Away from Zimbabwe, Nigeria did have a better day of trading on Friday at 516 points appreciation on their benchmark index, whereas when you look at Johannesburg as well, it had an 80.88 appreciation in the value of its benchmark index, and the Ghana Stock Exchange did not have any movement on their index at a 0.0% movement on the stock exchange. Basically, that's from the African stock exchanges. Remember to check out www.AFX Stock Exchange for more of your African stock exchange market updates. As an investor, it is very, very prudent of you to keep updated on what's happening on the different platforms of the different stock exchanges, who is moving, who is issuing dividends, who has released their financial results. And some of the sources of information could be the AFX Stock Exchange, which gives you the overall performance of the major stocks here in Africa. Now, moving to the United States of America, there was, of course, different trades that did happen on Friday, and they didn't end so well for the stocks after sliding. But however, of course, one of the stories that has been making headlines is basically about Elon Musk, who is worried about the economy. Now, for several months now, the richest man in the world has continued to sound the alarm, warning the economy risks a very deep recession if the central bank's monetary policy stays on course. While the Federal Reserve is holding its last monetary meeting of the year in the coming days, the serial entrepreneur has just made a new prediction, and his last predictions are very, very alarming. The Federal Reserve Bank, which is the central bank of United States, has raised the interest rates very sharply this year in the recent months, taking the benchmark rate from almost zero during the pandemic to a range of 3.75% and about 4% in the effort to combat inflation, which is at its highest in 40 years. But many economists say that this aggressive monetary policy will plunge the economy into a recession. Now, the bank will be holding a two-day meeting on the 13th and 14th of December this year. That's going to be in this week, and I think that's going to be tomorrow, but one on the 13th and then on the 14th, and we'll definitely be eagerly waiting for what will be coming out of that policy committee meeting. The policymakers are expected, according to experts, to raise the rates by 50 basis points. And this is following 4 consecutive 75 basis points hikes on the last policy committee meetings. In addition, the Federal Reserve Bank will publish its first quarterly forecasts since September. This will provide clues into where the central bank sees the U.S. economy headed over the next few years. The CME's group's Fed Watch continues to suggest that next week, of course, this week's announcements will be a 50 basis points rate increase, taking the Fed funds benchmark to 4.25% and 4.5%, with a target rate between 5% and 5.25% by the spring, already largely reflected in the futures trading as well. That's it, ladies and gentlemen, that we could get for you right now. Remember to hit us up on our Twitter handle at Smart24TV. But before I go, I would like to remind you about Zabu. Zabu is an initiative under Altex East Africa, a very wonderful private stock exchange, which was, of course, instituted in 2017 and is regulated by the Capital Markets Authority of Uganda. Under this exchange, you can now buy and sell treasury bonds across East Africa like no other time before in East Africa. By simply now dialing *292#, you can be able to register with your national identification number and start your buying or selling on the market with your favorite bonds, 4-year, 5-year, 7 years, name it, across East Africa, not only here in Uganda, but in Kenya and Tanzania as well. So if you're in any of these countries, you can be a major participant for this initiative. Now, you can join Altex and get to find out more about their products and visit their website at www.altexeastafrica.com. The markets open at 15 minutes past 8 a.m. and close at 15 minutes past 3 p.m. East African Standard Time. And you can, of course, check out some of their latest content online and on their Twitter handle at Altex East Africa. Thank you so much for tuning in and for watching Smart24 TV. More is yet to come your way. Just stay tuned. My name is Anthony SSEBALE. You can follow me on Twitter at Anthony SSEBALE, and you can follow Smart24 TV at Smart24 TV Live. And of course, I'll catch you tomorrow, same time, same place. Bye for now.
Smart 24, driving business.